What is up guys, today I'll be showing you an updated build guide for Blade Ninja. Let's get started. Before we proceed, if you're new to the channel and enjoy videos of builds and gacha rolls, make sure to subscribe. If you're a subscriber of my channel, you're probably familiar with my previous guide on AA Ninja. That one is pretty outdated already because ancient equipment weren't out yet, and since then, the Blade Ninja has undergone multiple buffs. You might have noticed as well that I don't call it AA Ninja anymore because design-wise, Blade Ninja is a mix of AA and skills, so AA Ninja will give it the wrong impression. So let's try and call it Blade Ninja from now on. The word blade is also a reference to one of the main attacks of the Blade Ninja, which is Flowing Blade. Before we get started on the builds, let's first discuss some of the key concepts behind Blade Ninja. First off is Blade Ninja's normal attack, which is called Flowing Blade. This is a modified auto attack where attack speed is fixed. This is the main reason why we don't fully build it as an AA class, because most AA builds need a fast attack speed. This attack consists of 4 stages, where the 4th stage is AoE. Flowing Shadow Heart is Blade Ninja's bread and butter. Most of our damage is going to come from this skill. This is a channeling skill which needs the caster to complete the first 4 stages of Flowing Blade first, before getting to release it. It then releases it in a narrow area in front of the caster. It scales off of Flowing Blade damage, but AA damage does not increase it. More on this later. One important thing to note is that enemies at the tip of the sword stab get increased damage. We'll discuss how to do this optimally in the combos section. A disadvantage of this skill is it roots us in place for a few seconds, making us vulnerable to attacks. Luckily, whenever auto-attacking or casting Flowing Shadow Heart, we get increased damage reduction. Another method for repositioning you can do is performing a mount cancel. Basically, just ride the mount mid-skill and it should stop channeling. Now I'm sure you've noticed the 2 skills that we're proccing while casting Flowing Blade as well as Flowing Shadow Heart. Those 2 skills are Shadow Warrior and Void Slash. Shadow Warrior is a damaging skill that has a chance to trigger while using Flowing Blade or Flowing Shadow Heart. This skill hits pretty hard but only has a max chance of triggering of 30% with the rune. This might seem pretty good, but Blade Ninja has fixed attack speed, so the most chances you get to trigger it is from Flowing Shadow Heart. Shadow Warrior was previously a forced neutral skill, but now it follows the element that the ninja has. Void Slash, on the other hand, is a debuff that gets applied on enemies whenever attacking. This includes Flowing Blade, Flowing Shadow Heart, as well as Shadow Warrior. It deals damage after a slight delay and deals double damage if the target is bleeding. This ignores race, element, as well as size. Moving on to our Blade Ninja exclusive mobility skill, Amaterasu Flash makes us dash 9 meters forward, inflicting damage with 100% chance to debuff the target with bleed. This works in conjunction with Void Slash. Finally, let's talk about Hidden Shadow and Thousand Shadows. These skills aren't exclusive to Blade Ninjas, but we benefit the most from them. Hidden Shadows gives more damage to our shadow clones and gives us a 50% chance of generating a clone on every auto attack. An added benefit of the Thousand Shadows skill is that each attack of the clones will increase our penetration by 10% up to 3 stacks for a total of 30%. Taking a look at all of those skills, we can see how the Blade Ninja was designed. The main priority of every Blade Ninja is to put out Flowing Shadow Heart. But since Flowing Shadow Heart is a skill which has a prerequisite, we also need to consider the other skills that we activate before we can release Flowing Shadow Heart. So these include Flowing Blade, Shadow Warrior, Void Slash, and Amaterasu Flash. Which is why when considering the attributes that we want to increase, we shouldn't focus on just one aspect of the Blade Ninja's kit. That having been said, I've prepared a graphic which shows the attributes and which skills that they increase. We can see that penetration and PDI are the attributes that increase all of our skills, but crit damage also increases majority of our damage and is relatively cheaper. My suggestion is we prioritize certain attributes until we get them to a reasonable amount, and then we can move on to more focused attributes such as auto attack damage and skill damage. Moving on to our auxiliary skills. Misty is our hide skill, which gives us increased flee and crit res. Fog Cutting is our Acer hide skill, which allows us to attack while hiding. Izayoi is our buff that allows us to instacast. Breaking Dawn is our Acer buff skill, which increases our penetration and crit damage but prevents us from hiding. But as shown in the video, you can cast this while hiding if you have Izayoi up as well. This also works with Prepare for Elite. Force Souls is our Converter skill, which lets us change element, gives us increased elemental attack, and also gives us additional attributes and effects depending on the element that we choose. Spectral Shift changes our attack to Ghost and gives us int and strength, but the Ghost conversion is overwritten by Force Souls, and stats are retained. Shadow Leap is our mobility skill, which gives us increased movement speed and lets us ignore ground effects as well as range attacks for a period with the rune. Summoning Ogari is a damaging skill based off of magic attack, but is also useful for staggering enemies. Marsh summons a field which removes other ground fields and also decreases agi and movement speed. Myriad Hakume consumes your Force Souls aura and removes all area fields around you, then decreases the enemy's elemental reduction and casts a corresponding status effect on them depending on the Force Souls aura consumed. Makibishi is a targeted AoE ground skill which gives us a 100% chance to stun and to bleed. Up to 2 stacks of this can be casted. Tranquil Restoration is our healing skill, which restores up to 25% of our max HP and max SP per second for 3 seconds. Delude is a debuff skill which rearranges all of the skills in the enemy's skill bar and turns them into a question mark. Hollow prevents enemies from casting attacks based on your Force Souls element. In this example, Force Souls was fire and the enemy couldn't cast Magnum Break. Curse tricks the enemy into seeing his HP is near 0. Hazy Fantasy is our rune skill which allows us to steal the heals of the enemy. Dodge is a targeted skill that reduces the movement speed of a target and allows us to teleport to it by pressing the button again. Quick Escape is our anti-fatal skill, which summons either a dummy or a clone depending if we have the 3rd line of the rune. We have Sword Cultivation, which increases our attack, auto attack, and damage increase. Shadow Slash gives us increased attack and casting range when hidden. And finally, last on our list of supplementary skills which are useful to the Blade Ninja, we have Soul Severance, which gives our attacks true damage based off of luck. For PvE, this is the stat build that I run with. My 3 top stats are Strength, Agi, and Luck. Strength is our main source of attack, and for auto attack, Strength also gives an increased multiplier. Agi is one of the most important because it increases our Flowing Blade damage, which in turn increases our Flowing Shadow Heart damage. And the increased survivability from the increased flee is also helpful. And finally, Luck is needed to increase our crit rate to ensure that our attacks always deal more damage. The extra crit from Luck also increases the crit damage you gain from Gold Foil Fox Mask. You can then allot the remaining stat points into Dexterity until you get Instacast, which is around 120 dex, and then the rest into Vitality to give you more HP. In PvP, I split most of my strength stat points into Vitality for increased tankiness and Dexterity to increase my hit rate. The hit rate is to ensure that my Flowing Shadow Heart can hit enemies. Sadly, Flowing Shadow Heart does need to calculate hit first before it can calculate crit rate. It only has a skill hit modifier of 30%, which means the effective hit of your skill has an extra 30% of your current hit rate. As discussed earlier, penetration and PDI are the best, but crit damage is still worth it because it increases majority of our damage. It's also a lot cheaper. I recommend the following progression. These values are what I prefer, but they're partly based off of reductions in legend instances. Take note that this is just a recommendation and that the optimal setup will always depend on your gears as well as your handbook. For PvE, this is my current equipment setup. I have sources of PDI from my offhand, garment card, and accessories, as well as some enchants. Penetration from my boots, mouth headgear, back gear, and offhand enchant. Crit damage from my armor, garment, accessories, as well as most of my right side headgears. attack from my boots, cards, as well as accessory enchants, auto attack damage from garment, MVP damage, skill damage, and damage to large from cards, and finally lifesteal from my goblin leader weapon card. Ninja is very squishy, and if you usually don't have a support in your party, you need lifesteal. As for the weapon itself, our exclusive class weapon is the best, so prioritize getting this to plus 15 as soon as possible. After casting all of my buffs, this is what my attributes look like. For PvP, I reuse some of my equipment, but for the right side headgear and cards, I now lean towards applying CC, which are Stun, Sleep, and Curse. Switch out my PDI offhand to one that provides more crit as well as penetration, and offhand card to Aura Spirit to take advantage of the CC, and then switch accessory cards to enhance my stun rate. The Blade Ninja's damage is mostly in our Flowing Shadow Heart, which takes some time to set up, so we need the CC to ensure we can release it. If you don't have any of my equipment, here are some alternatives. For relics, here are my recommendations. And finally, for Oracle Mirror extracts, here are my recommendations. For PvE, here is my rune setup. Top priority runes are Flashing Shadow, True Meaning of Shadow Warrior, All Direction Shadow, One Sigil Thought, and Cicada Knight. I use Misty Shroud Accelerating for PvE, but for PvP, the Dim Moon rune is the best 6 slot. Now that you know what the stats, attributes, skills, and gears for Blade Ninja are, we can now proceed with learning how to perform the Blade Ninja combo. The Blade Ninja combo focuses on Flowing Shadow Heart's mechanic, where we get 2 times more damage on targets at the max distance of our skill range. This means enemies at the tip of our sword during Flowing Shadow Heart receive more damage. To perform the combo, you need to do the first 4 Flowing Blade attacks and then optionally do the extra 4th hit through mount cancelling. You do the extra 4th hit by riding the mount mid-animation of your 4th hit and tapping Flowing Blade again. I discussed this further in another of my videos. After that, you have 3 options to get the max distance. Either walk, do Amma Flash, or Shadow Leap. Then release Flowing Shadow Heart. This will take time to practice, but it is worth the extra damage. And since the ninja is squishy, we also don't want to be sticking to the enemy all the time, so getting to max distance is actually helping us survive. Now that we know the basic combo, it's all a matter of just mixing your skills and weaving in the Blade Ninja combo in between. I recommend using Izayoi, Breaking Dawn, Spectral Shift, and then 4 souls on your Prepare for Elite if the enemy is not of the Ghost element. If the enemy is Ghost, I just cast Prepare for Elite, then recast Spectral Shift. Period Hakame also helps lowering reduction of the enemy, so make sure to cast that as well before attacking. Don't forget that this consumes your aura, so you need to recast 4 souls after. Because the Blade Ninja combo ends with us at max distance from the enemy, you can take the chance to rebuff or cast other supplementary skills before diving in again. The clones you summon through auto-attacking should also be able to take the attack of the enemy before you resume attacking. The Blade Ninja's role for both PvE and PvP is a DPS. In PvE, you can go solo if you have a Goblin Leader card, but it'll be much easier if you play with a party that can help you survive. If acting as a main DPS, have a Nidhogg protect you with their Queen of Dragons skill to increase your damage reduction and the Saint to give you shields and the standard buffs. If you're acting as the secondary DPS, just let the main DPS or the tank take the hits of the enemy, and it should be easier for you to do your combo and survive. In PvP, I would say that the best game modes for the Blade Ninja are the small scale PvP, which are the 6v6 or the 12v12 game modes. It's easier to control the battle if there are only a few enemies. Because of our illusion skills, it's possible to disable an enemy and freely attack them. Just remember to either cast Makibishi or an illusion skill before attacking. For war game modes, it gets harder because there are a lot more enemies which can attack you. To perform well, you'd have to be hidden most of the time and use Shadow Leap a lot to evade the ground skills. One other fix is the HP relic, but that's for whales. I previously used Blade Ninja as a breaker, and with the clone summon on auto attack buff, I think it can function well enough as a secondary breaker. The most important thing is that you communicate with your team so that you can support each other more properly. When the Blade Ninja was first released, things were rough, but with the recent buffs and changes, I would say we're in an okay spot. We aren't meta like RM or Genos in PvE, legend instances are still very hard to solo, and for PvP we mostly should avoid competitive modes, but the build is definitely viable for the other game modes. With recent patches such as the base HP increase, our survivability should increase. Future patches such as Shadow Equipment also look promising because you can get more choices to counter our weaknesses, in Blade Ninja's case, our squishiness. With the right build and equips, the Blade Ninja should be good enough for you to enjoy playing solo or with a party in Ragnarok. My only wish is we get a card specifically for Blade Ninja, just like how the Shuriken and Magic builds did. Maybe something which removes our attack speed cap, increases our attack speed, gives us some inherent lifesteal, or something that increases the multiplier of Amatera's flash. And with the upcoming hero classes, I really hope we get the dual katana class. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching guys. I hope you learned a lot from this guide, and I'll see you next time.